Hello, everybody. My name is Renasia May. I go by Nasia. I am a social work major with a focus on substance use and mental health. And this is my evaluation project on a program evaluation of the Emergency Stabilization Care Program. So the Emergency Stabilization Care Program is a community based program, and I will be calling it ESC for short. This program is a new program developed within NYAP, and NYAP is the National Youth Advocacy Program. So that's where my internship was for the past 6 months, and that is pretty much where I was able to do my evaluation. Most of you may be familiar with NYAP through the logo right here at the top. Become a foster parent. We are always looking for new foster parents. So if you are interested in being a foster parent, you can reach out to me, Nasia, directly, or you can reach out via our website, or you can call one of our offices and get more information. Back to ESC though. So the ESC is the youngest foster care program at NYAP. We're only 2 years old, and we focus primarily on crisis care. We provide a variety of services to individuals. We provide 24-hour, 7 days a week intensive intervention care. And we receive our referrals from custodial agencies like Franklin County. We get referrals from Lincoln County Schools, Delaware County, but we mainly focus on Franklin County Children's Services being our main custodial organization. So, like I said, we focus primarily on crisis care. We have four notable areas that we really like to work with our youth on. The first one being safety, the second one being stabilization in a home, three being the coping skills, and then four being their behavioral concerns. And so we always try to make sure that when we're terminating services, that we're linking them with some community resources that could also help keep them stabilized after our program. Um, Also, just to let you guys know, we also only work with the youth for roughly 30 to 45 days. So that's a small time frame to try and address so many areas. However, we'll see what the program evaluation says. So this was a program level evaluation. It took place in the homes, in the schools, the community centers, the libraries, the Ys, even at friends' house. Like wherever the youth is, we will meet them there. That's pretty much how we've operated, especially with me being like one of the newest members to enter the team. It's always been that way. Wherever the youth is, that's where we go. We provide them with intense services. Um, so, yeah. So, our program really tries to stabilize the youth in their housing, their coping skills, their behavioral concerns, safety, and it can really like vary from child to child, from situation to situation. And I would say, being here for only 6 months, I can't tell you that there's something that I haven't seen working with these youth. Um, So as far as the assessment, I provided a chart with the client demographics that were used for the research project. However, I do want to kind of give more information about our assessment and how that started off for us. So the youth that we serve in the ESC program are typically youth between the ages of 8 and 18. They've been referred by a custodial agency. They have a history of abuse, whether that's neglect, physical, mental, emotional, or sexual. Um, and they also have behavioral health concerns, and some of them are involved in other systems as well, like either juvenile courts or foster care, or just something along those lines of having another layer of systems to work within. um, With the ESC clients that we chose for the assessment, I did write out the criteria that we use to identify these clients, because there's so many external factors um, that will contribute to a youth being in our care, that I wanted to keep some parallel within the youth that we use for our project. So the criteria we use to identify clients for this project include engagement in the juvenile courts. So each of these youth have pending charges. There was a change in their guardianship status to where they were either in their parents' care, or they had a guardian or a guardian ad litem, and then that transitioned to being agency, having custody. Um, the initial referrals for these youth were behavioral concerns, and potential charges. And then each of these youth have an extensive trauma history with high ACE scores as well. So that was the criteria that I used to find out what youth would be used for this evaluation project. My evaluation question is: did the Emergency Stabilization Care Program improve the level of functioning in daily living activities for the youth referred? The daily living activities that we are measuring is housing, coping skills, behavioral concerns, and safety. I included two additional questions because I felt like within my original evaluation question, we were able to explore these questions as well. The first question says: does the community based ESC program stabilize children with an extensive trauma history? Like I said, the youth that I specifically chose for this project, they have an extensive trauma history. The second question is: does the youth involved in the ESC program get placed in foster care to achieve stability? And the reason why I chose this question is because it examines if the program increases foster care placement or if it provides alternative care. And so within this evaluation, we were able to explore those as well. Some of the client problems that I listed are the instability in the home, engaging in unsafe behaviors. There are comorbid mental health diagnoses, and there's a lack of community resources for the family. There's various factors that negatively impact the youth and hinders their safety, their emotional regulation, their stability in the home, and contributes to their behavior. And so we just wanted to narrow down on the youth specifically for this evaluation, instead of looking at all the different behaviors that different youth display. Um, and it's very prevalent. It affects many kids across urban areas, and our referrals come very frequently. And so it was helpful to kind of shrink the sample size so that we could stay somewhat focused on something like some of the areas. The desired outcome, and this is for our clients in this evaluation, but then it's also including all of the clients that we see. And so our first desired outcome is that the youth will respond to services. Then we hope to achieve immediate stabilization between 30 and 45 days, and then we will improve their emotional regulation. We will increase access to resources. We will increase resilience and enhance their overall well-being. Just to provide more information about the clients that we have in this evaluation, we refer to them as Client A, Client B, and Client C. Client A has an unknown race. She's 15 years old. Her behavioral concerns on referral are AWOLing, stealing, and going off days and days with her boyfriend with no contact with home. She has pending charges for domestic violence. This was a domestic dispute between her and her boyfriend, and then a dispute between her and her mother. She also has pending charges for stealing. Client B, she's Latin. She is 17 years old. Her behavioral concerns are aggressive behaviors, AWOLing, and stealing, specifically cars. Um, this youth has pending charges for truancy and then domestic violence, as she has beat her mom and her brother on several occasions. Um, Client C, white, 16-year-old male, with aggression and sexual assault allegations and AWOL. The pending charges are for sexual assault that happened in his home when he was with his biological mother. The intervention used is the ESC program, and the ESC program basically consists of the youth engaging in intense psychotherapy and therapeutic behavioral services, 1 hour sessions 3 times a week for 5 weeks. So they spend about 35 days in the program, which is 5 days. I'm sorry, which is 5 days from being at that first mark, and then being 10 days away from as late as we can have them in the program. Um, for best practices, I definitely noticed at the start of this intervention that there were resource constraints, limited everything. There's only 2 social workers on this team, which means there's limited time for scheduling. And remind you, this is a 24-hour, 7 days a week kind of program. There are on call services that need to happen. And so it was definitely limited everything, and I noticed that there was funding that we lack as well with being a 2-year-old program that we can maximize in order to maximize youth engagement as well. Here's my logic model. In my logic model, we break down how we will engage with the client, what we offer, what the short term, medium term, and long term goals are as well. Um, so, yeah. The evaluation design that I decided to use is a mixed method design, a mixed method single group design where we use case studies and the DLA, which is the daily learning activities tool. And with the case studies, they provided the qualitative data, and the DLA provided us with the quantitative data. And together, the reason why I use them together is because it helped us to be able to work with a short time frame given. It combines qualitative and quantitative data. It enhances validity of the findings, and then it allows the in-depth and continuous monitoring of the youth, even if we refer them to a different agency. The measurement plan that we used was the DLA was conducted at intake and at termination. And then we used the case studies to measure every session that the youth had, whether they made progress toward their goal, there was no change, or if there was little progress being made. And so together we were able to use both of those um, to measure their progress in those 4 areas over time. So the 4 areas, reminding you guys, is the behavioral concerns, the coping skills, the safety, and the stabilization in housing. The reports include 15 minimum sessions. The reason why I say minimum is because I remind you guys we are a crisis care program. So even though we had our 15 scheduled sessions within the 35 days, when youth had crisis and would call the crisis hotline, we would have to go out and lay eyes on the youth to provide them with more interventions, with more services. And so, especially our youth, our white male who had the charges for sexual assault, um, he ended up doing that again at one of the foster homes that we were placing him in, and so he reoffended, and so we were seeing him a little bit more than 15 times. The data was collected from the youth, the guardian, the therapist, the FSC, aka the Family Service Coordinator, the care team, and meetings were summarized. All of those meetings and events are documented and evolved. Time, date, improvement, all of that. We measured the mean, we measured the changes over time for the youth per category, so in all 4 of those categories, and we had no issues with data collection. We did use Evolve to keep track of all of our case study notes, to keep track of the days and times we were meeting with the youth, what interventions were being used, and how the youth was responding to those. We also used the DLA, which was a 20-question tool, and it examines 20 areas, and we measured the daily functioning with a 7 response scale. If you look at the top, those top 7 boxes, I'm going to read them from left to right. Starting with one. One is extremely severe functioning, meaning they're not functioning well at all. Two is severe functioning. Three is serious impairment. Four is moderate impact. Five is mild functioning. Six is strength and intermediate. And then 7 is strength with independence with no support. So with that being said, that was the scale that we used to be able to rate the youth on their on those 4 areas, from the intake to the termination of the services. The graph that I use shows the pre and post results for clients A, B, and C. This just shows, like, during intake, client 1, their behavior was at a 4, housing was at a 3, safety was at a 4, and the coping skills was also at a 4. The second bar shows client A's progress at termination. So that means her score went from a 4 to a 5 for behavior. It went from a 3 to a 6 for housing. It went from a 4 to a 6 for safety, and then it went from a 4 to a 6 for coping skills. And so that's how you would be able to look at the graph to look at the scores in the youth. With the graph and the DLA scores and the case studies, we have some implications and some ethical considerations, including informed consent. These youth were in custody of the agency, so while I was trying to get consent from their guardian, I meant from their parent, that was not necessary as the agency had custody at the time. Confidentiality, ensuring that all the data is stored securely in the Evolve database. And then cultural sensitivity. None of the youth that we worked with had the same race or, cultural upbringings. And so we just wanted to be mindful that we were being mindful of their cultural differences. The conclusion from conducting this evaluation is that client 1 did show notable change across all categories with a total of 8 points of change. The highest area of improvement for client A and B was housing and safety. There was moderate changes across all 3 of them for housing and safety, due to no change in client C. However, each of the youth did improve in their coping skills. Client C made the smallest amount of change with only improvement in coping skills. This youth specifically reoffended, and he was pretty much sexually assaulting younger youth in almost every foster home that we placed him in within those 30 days. So it was very, very hard to make progress with him. He was very unstable and unable to stay in the same home for a longer period of time for us to work on other things like past his behavioral concerns and safety. While client 1 made the most progress, client 3 made the least amount of change, and the combination of case studies along with the DLA helps fill in the gaps of why these things were occurring. In the case notes, you will see that client 3 had that reoffending, that police were involved, that there was still poor behavior, and he wasn't really able to stabilize. As far as our second youth, she was able to stabilize outside of her home. She was placed in foster care. The first youth who was AWOL in client A, who showed the most improvement, she had to have an ankle monitor on during her time with us, and I think that helped with improving her scores and really improving her development. However, I don't think if she had the ankle monitor on that we would have seen the notable change across all categories that we saw. I learned that the ESC program is an effective program for youth, as there is improvement in the youth, especially as far as gaining coping skills. I definitely think a short term evaluation can be difficult to conduct with the short turnaround time that we have already just to implement the evaluation itself. I didn't have a comparison group, and it was limited by a small sample just so that we could stay focused on keep like the common things that the youth were dealing with versus, oh, this youth has this going on and this youth has this going on. There was no like comparison or like similarities within some of the things they were dealing with. I would definitely use a different measurement tool if I had to do anything differently. I would use a different measurement tool that focuses on one aspect of development instead of 20 aspects of development, and then trying to focus on just the ones that were relevant to the program. There is my resource page. And thank you for watching. Go Bugs!